I will discuss informative essay. Title: Domestic Violence Victims. Domestic violence is not physical violence alone. Domestic violence is any behavior the purpose of which is to gain power and control over a spouse, partner, girl, boyfriends, or intimate family members. Abuse is a learned behavior. It is not caused by angry, mental problems, drugs, or alcohol, or other common excuses. Domestic violence recognizes that victims can include anyone, regardless of socioeconomic background, educational level, race, age, sexual orientation, religion, or gender. Domestic violence was formerly referred to as a wife abuse. However, this term was abandoned when the definition of domestic violence was changed to reflect that wives are not the only ones who can fall victim to domestic violence. Institutions like the Commission on Human Rights and the Philippine Commission on Women have sounded the alarm on the rising incidence of domestic violence during the pandemic, especially in our country, the Philippines, where 3 out of 20 women and girls aged 15 to 49 have experienced physical violence. 1 out of 20 has suffered from sexual violence, and 1 out of 4 married Filipinas has experienced spousal violence, based on the 2017 National Demographic and Health Survey. Causes of domestic violence: often women and children are the soft targets of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a gruesome crime that also causes a number of deaths. Some of the most common causes of domestic violence are illiteracy and economical dependency on the menfolk. The male dominated society plays an important role in this problem. Further, dowry is also one of the leading causes, which have the consequence of violence against newlywed brides. In many parts of the world, physically assaulting women and passing horrendous remarks is common. Moreover, children are also become victims of his inhuman behavior more than often. It is important to recognize the double standards and hypocrisy or society. A lot of the times, the abuser is either psychotic or requires psychological counseling. However, in a more general term, domestic violence is the outcome of cumulative irresponsible behavior which a section of society demonstrates. It is also important to note that solely the abuser is not just responsible, but also those who allow this to happen and act as mere mute spectators. Spectators. Types of domestic violence. Domestic violence has many ill effects, which depends on the kind of domestic violence happenings. It range it ranges from being physical to emotional and sexual to economic. Physical abuser uses physical force which injures the victim or endangers their life. It, it includes hitting, punching, choking, slapping, and other kinds of violence. Moreover, the abuser also denies the victim medical care. Further, there is emotional abuse in which the person threatens and intimidates the victim. It also includes undermining, undermining their self-worth. It includes threatening them with harm or public humiliation. Similarly, constant name calling and criticism also count as emotional abuse. After that, we have sexual abuse in which the per- perpetrator use force for unwanted sexual activity. If your partner does not consent to it, it is force which makes it sexual abuse. Finally, we have economic abuse where the abuser controls the victim's money and their economic resources. They do they do this to exert control on the man and make them dependent solely on them. If your partner has to beg you for money, then it counts as economic abuse. This damage the self-esteem of the victim. Mm. Domestic violence is one of the most horrendous, horrendous kinds of abuse suffered women in our society today. The, the statistics shows that 85% of domestic violence victims are female. Only 15% of victims are men. Domestic violence can happen to anyone. It does not matter the race, grade, religion, or standing in society of the victim. If the if the issue of domestic violence is not dealt with in a matter which is sufficient, then this type of abuse will continue among all classes of society with no ending. In order for us as a society to eradicate this horrendous type of abuse, we need to stand together to make tougher laws which will protect the victims of this abuse. To conclude, domestic violence has many forms which includes physical aggression like kicking and beating, and it can also be sexual or emotional. It is essential to recognize the sign of domestic violence and report the abuser if it is happening around you or to you. And that's all. Thank you.